If you know anything about technical analysis, you know that this right here is extremely bullish. I'm on QQQ's weekly chart right now. And this candle right here is the week of September 3rd, so 2 weeks ago. It was a very bearish candle. And if you remember in the last week video we did on YouTube, I mentioned this 445 to 450 range on QQQ and how it was very supportive, one, but then two, it had to hold. Otherwise, there'd be a lot more downside after, because this is kind of the last stop for bulls, the last area that they could stop that downside move that we had from that previous week. Well, they definitely listened, because this upside move they had last week is incredible. It completely engulfed the previous weekly candle from over here. You can see we closed this week above the last week's candle. Very, very bullish. This is the type of thing that happens normally after pretty substantial lows have formed. We've seen that before, actually. For example, over here, we didn't even have a bullish engulfing candle during this period, but we had a bearish weekly candle over here, and then it was able to get picked back up and just continued to melt to the upside. You could see over here, same thing. Instead, this time we had that bullish engulfing. It was able to close the week above the previous week and just continue to the upside to melt up. Over here, same exact thing. We had a pretty two bearish weekly candles, and then over here, it was able to engulf both of those weeks in just 1 week. Also was a precursor to a lot more upside. There's a lot of scenarios where this has happened, and almost all of them are precursors to a lot more upside. So what we have over here, and I'll go to the daily chart right now, you can see is a breakout above the previous range that I showed in the last week's video. So we had that range of roughly between, like I said, 445, 450, all the way up to 470.45. As long as we remained under 470.45 and above 445, we would remain in this green box until it broke either side. Well, it was able to find a bid very quickly, like I just said from last week, and it was able to go all the way up above the top of the range in only a couple sessions. So very, very impressive showing by bulls. I'm glad they were able to fix the previous week's mishap in this kind of mini pullback that we saw. And as you can see over here, there's a lot more potential for upside, especially as long as we can remain above 470.45. So the plan for this week is, as long as we're above this level, I'm going to be buying any of those dips. So whether it's an intraday dip, whether it's a daily dip, etc., I'm interested in buying those dips. I think this can go a lot higher, like into the 480s and above 484.09, this level that I have here. I think there's actually a valid shot and get back above 500. As crazy as that might sound. So I may sound overly bullish. I was bullish back over here too, if you remember. And then we had this pullback over here. I'm not exactly sure still why we had this pullback. Kind of seems like it was a last second thing, and now we're all the way back up to prices we were trading only a couple weeks ago. But I have the same thesis as before, and this just makes it even more bullish. The fact we had this downside move and it got bought up in such an aggressive fashion, especially a daily candle like this. This daily candle is incredible. 2% up day with a wick like this. That just shows a ton of demand around this mid 450 range and just supporting price for a lot higher price discovery. So I really like this right now. I probably sound very overly bullish, but it's warranted in my opinion for this week, especially as long as we remain above this 470.45. This is the bias point, really. There's trades that can be based off this level, but then also a bias can be based off it, because as long as we stay above, this can continue to melt to the upside. If it goes back into the range, doesn't find support around this level, then we're going to see some more chop. But as of now, really strong daily candle closes, really strong weekly candle close. All of those things are very bullish from a technical perspective. Additionally,
hey guys, we wanted to take a minute and talk about our sponsor for today, Moomoo. With AI-related stocks being in the spotlight this year and making some big gains, you need to make sure you have a reliable broker on your side. For option traders looking to maximize returns, Moomoo's option screener could help. Unlike other platforms, Moomoo not only screens option contracts to help your search, but also provides in-depth analysis on Greeks, probabilities, and volatility. This helps you assess potential profits and risks before making a move. Furthermore, Moomoo provides another level of data, such as earnings transcripts for your favorite stocks, summarized by their AI, analyst rating reports, and much more. This allows you to make informed decisions without having to spend time digging through extensive reports. If you're a new user, sign up using our link and make a deposit to receive up to 15 free stocks, along with an 8.1% limited time APY on idle cash and a transfer-in bonus of up to $300. Don't miss out on these rewards. Terms and conditions apply.
Last week, we saw a very interesting move in NVIDIA, and this wasn't just interesting based on the technicals, it also was interesting based on the flow. So I'm going to go all the way back here on the historical flow tab. You can see I already have it ready for all of last week, so September 9th to the 13th. I have it filtered for over 500,000 in premium. So as we can see here, on September 11th, so that was last Wednesday, we saw a ton of bullish flow. It was actually ridiculous how much bullish flow we saw in NVIDIA. And the reason why it's a lot is because, well, one, you can see only green here. That's a very simple way of looking at it, but still it works. There really isn't anything bearish about this. But if we look at it a bit further, you can see here, a lot of these were for the October 4th expiration, so a couple weeks from now. And they were all around the money, so either just a little bit in the money or just a little bit out the money or at the money as well. In terms of the strike that they picked. So really directional in nature to a degree. And then a lot of them were executed above the ask, at the ask for these calls, etc. And then also some put sells as well, which is bullish. So we saw a ton of these, a ton of premium, not just the quantity of these orders. We saw like 2.7 million print here for the 125 strike. It had a little bit extra time, but still that's very bullish above the ask. Over here, 2.2 million for a put sell. And then just all of these highlighted ones, 600,000, 600,000, 600,000, etc., etc. That's very bullish, especially when you see continuous orders like this on a momentum stock like NVIDIA. So the interesting thing about this is we saw it on September 11th. We saw it hit the tape at 10:25, or around roughly 10:20 to 10:30, that 10-minute time span. We saw all these prints come in. If you look back over here to the 15-minute chart and go back to September 11th of last week, you can see during that time, that just so happened to be the exact low of day of NVIDIA. So right in between this time, 10:30 right here, you can see 10:15, right around this time, it was the low of day, and it melted to the upside after. It didn't even look back, just continued to go to the upside. All of this bullish flow was an amazing complement over here for this dip intraday on NVIDIA. It was relatively strong compared to the rest of tech on that day, which is another plus. I was able to find a very clear and strong support and just continued to go to the upside. Now it's flagging, probably is going to continue to the upside as well after it breaks out of this mini flag you can see right here. So really like how this one panned out, not just from a technical perspective, like I said, but also from a flow complement perspective. It's beautiful when you can see setups that fit both the technical criteria as well as the flow criteria. And this one just worked very, very nicely. So whenever you see prints like this, just hitting one after the other, definitely something you at least want to follow up with. And it worked out very nicely. So I'm going to continue to watch NVIDIA flow going into this week, because again, there is potential, could have some more upside, as crazy as that may sound after having such a melt up move to end last week. But it is flagging, like I said, there is potential. It just continues to go, especially with how well tech looks. What I just showed you with QQQ, it looks really bullish right now. And we know based on this year so far, when things look bullish on a macro time scale, they can continue to run to the upside, even though it may seem like it's already super high up. We've seen these melt up like moves all year. Just has been the trend so far, just like NVIDIA over here, just continued to melt to the upside for quite a while. Same thing in previous months to start off the year, like January, February, just a lot of bullish activity all year. And I don't get to decide what direction the market wants to choose. I can just follow along with it, and that's just going to help with overall success in the market, just following the trend. So that's been the big motto for me this year: follow the trend, don't try to fight it. And that's what I intend to do this week. Now, final thing I want to mention is Meta. I really like this just based on the technicals. The reason why is because, well, one, we had a downtrend break over here. It doesn't look nice on the daily. I'll show you on the 15-minute. Looks a bit better there, but we had a downtrend break. You can see it starts from the top pivot up here on August 22nd, goes all the way down to over here, and we broke out above it. That's the first bullish aspect of this. Now, the second bullish aspect is you can probably see there's 3 red lines that I have here, and that's showing that there's a potential for an inverse head and shoulder pattern. So we have the left shoulder over here, we have the head, and then we have the right shoulder. Well, everyone knows that inverse head and shoulder is bullish. So in this case here, if it did dip for whatever reason this week or next week to go back down to around 515, 516, maybe even 513 at the lowest, there's a potential loading opportunity for calls because this would be a beautiful inverse head and shoulder. I could see this going a lot higher, all the way up to around 540 on an inverse head and shoulder breakout. And realistically, if this inverse head and shoulder forms, I can see it going a lot higher than 540. Just we need to see confirmation above that, since that's the current high. If we can get above that, then we can see it go to 560 plus, as crazy as that may sound. So I like this for the potential of an inverse head and shoulder. It doesn't even have to make that in order to get to 540, because the downtrend breakout is sufficient enough. Plus we have a curl. What do I mean by a curl? Well, we have a known range over here, and what's happening up here is two things. So one, we have a supply zone up here that it's rejected off of a couple times now. It goes actually all the way back to over here. You can see it rejected over here. So we have a supply zone. And what's happening is we had a rejection from the supply zone for the third time, but instead of going all the way back down, I'll show you visually here by drawing it. Instead of going back down all the way to the lower end of the range around the 450s, it's actually curling up here, which shows strength. It shows that there's still support, or there's heightened support now from bulls, instead of just following the previous trend, which was go to the upside of that supply zone up here and then drop down to the lower end, go to the supply zone up here, drop down to the lower end, go to the supply zone over here, but it didn't drop down to the lower end this time. It actually curled. So whenever you see those curl setups, whether it's under a downtrend, like a macro downtrend, we've seen it on one of my favorite examples is Apple. I'll show you very briefly here. So a great example of this on Apple here, we do have this downtrend. So you can see it start from the top pivot over here. This is back in early 2024, by the way. And then you could see here, we retested that downtrend, rejected initially, but instead of going back down to the lower end, which you'd expect based on the downtrend that's happened before, you could see went to the top, which would act similarly as the supply zone on Meta, just a downtrend resistance here and then back down, and then kind of went back up, didn't test all the way, and then back down again. We're within a downtrend. That's the literal definition of it. But over here, we rejected. Instead of going back down, it curled right here, as you can see, and then pop breakout right out of it. So that's kind of what I'm seeing over here on Meta, or at least has potential for it, and that's why I'm so interested, because these curl setups can have nice potential for breakouts of either supply zone or downtrend. And if it were to break out of the supply zone, I could see it going a lot higher afterwards. So that's why I'm so interested in it. I'm watching the flow this week. Nothing too interesting last week, but I'll continue to watch it. Hopefully see something like NVDA on it. That'd be a nice complement for the flow to technical ratio. Regardless, I'm interested in this setup for this week. My interest in tech is the main summary for this video. Regardless, looking forward to the week ahead. See you guys next time.